Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 3rd of May, comes to you from London. And so we start looking at the dollar index recovering back into bullish territory as we'd expected, these longer term trends dominating. So any short term weakness is short lived. And we see here on the 60-minute chart, we've got quite a few upside targets here. 2% is the sort of near side target. We do have long-term resistance on the 1% point and figure chart, but the weekly and daily Ichimoku charts are bullish, so we're seeing that bullish outlook for the dollar still dominating. The euro is weaker against that stronger dollar, so we're back into bearish territory with 4 downside targets, so multiple downside targets, telling us that we're almost certainly going to fall further. And looking at the dollar against the yen, we're seeing here that the chart is still just a bit flat, not quite back into bullish territory, but it is just entering that zone, and we are still medium and long-term bullish as well. Sterling is holding its ground, is looking quite bullish against the dollar, and against the euro we're seeing sterling also looking stronger as well. And the Swiss franc, we're seeing sterling holding 132.79, so looking pretty strong as well. And against the Aussie dollar also looking strong. Bitcoin sitting at $5,500, so we have managed to creep back to that level. So we're gradually seeing Bitcoin rising. So it's bullish short and medium term. We've got upside targets of around 19% on the medium term chart, and similar levels 18% on the long term chart. So it does look like Bitcoin is entering a new territory. The S&P 500 index it was down slightly last night, so we're just struggling to really, although we broke to new highs, we're really struggling to motor as a result of that. So it still could be a double top. We don't know until we see the pattern develop, but at the moment the market is not convincingly making new highs. The Nasdaq actually is edging higher. But again, we've just turned short-term bearish there. The Dow is down 0.5%, and again, it's also just looking a little bit weaker, short-term bearish. So we are just seeing a little bit of pressure here on equities in the US, and the Russell 2000 hasn't participated in the rise, consequently hasn't participated as much in the falls. Looking at the futures this morning, the S&P future up 0.2%, the Nasdaq E-mini up just over 1/3%, does suggest that the US market will open higher. The FTSE 100 index is up this morning, but again, bearish below the cloud. Just struggling, really. Doesn't look like it's heading for new highs here. And bearish short term, we've got a couple of downside targets around 2% lower. Looking at the mid-caps, the 250, we're down slightly here as well and back into bearish territory. So we're seeing that as a general theme in markets the last few days, just starting to head weaker. Germany holding on to its gains, weaker euro helping there, and the CAC 40 in Paris also just holding on to its gains as well. The Japanese market is looking a little bit flat as well. We're just slowly selling off here. So we're seeing that very much as a theme of markets generally. The Hong Kong index actually just holding on, and China up 0.5% overnight, but not enough to change the picture here. Hitting long-term resistance on the lagging line, pretty clear cut there. The Indian market actually up 1/3%. Looking pretty strong still, holding on to its gains. Lots of upside targets on the Sensex, so it's looking pretty good. The Aussie market virtually unchanged overnight, but has had a pretty good run. Brent crude selling off again, so we're just back to $70.50. So we're seeing that weaker oil. We may be heading into the territory now. We're at the time of year where the seasonality starts to kick in, and we have a weaker end to the year. We have a stronger start and then a weaker end. The WTI chart also lower. That's spread at about $9 at the moment, and we are just nudging that $61 level. US nat gas sitting at $2.61, so not much change there. Gold has sold off quite a bit over the last few days, and we're back into bearish territory. And more importantly, medium term is starting to look quite bearish for gold. We've got downside targets 1254 and 1261, so we are seeing some effect there. The long term, we've got a downside target and two upside targets that are activated. The downside one not yet activated. So it is just looking a little bit more bearish. Silver also lower and looking bearish, and US 10-year yields actually climbed a little bit on the Fed's announcement this week. So even though rates were left unchanged, it's the outlook, and so we're seeing here that hold is probably still signaling a low point for US interest rates. Taking a look at the individual stocks, we start, and this data coming from Yahoo Finance. We start by looking at the Dow. DuPont was the worst performer last night, down 6%. So that's really showing up on the chart. So putting in the bearish territory. We've underperformed the Dow Jones Index by about 5% this year so far. Caterpillar was the next worst performer. Home Depot was up 1%, so a little bit better performance there. They've outperformed the market by 5% so far this year. Taking a look at the Nasdaq 100, we had Apple. They were down 0.6%. Google down 0.5%. They've had a bit of a bad week after their disappointing results, so we're seeing that in the weekly candle showing up, but still outperforming the market by 7% so far this year. Facebook were down 0.25%, but looking very strong, outperforming the market by 25% so far this year. And we take a quick look at some of the others here. Tesla, they've had a pretty bad time. Below 250 is bad for Tesla, and they've massively underperformed the market so far this year. And we have a quick look at Netflix. They were up very slightly, one of the better looking charts, and again have outperformed the market quite well this year. Taking a look at the Aussie market, the best performer was ResMed. They were up 9%. Pilbara Minerals up 9% as well. The ResMed chart actually looking pretty good, breaking to new highs there. The Pilbara chart actually quite difficult to read, but still bearish on the long term. Looking at the downside, we had Janus Henderson Group. They were down 12%, and they've been hit quite badly, and their relative has been really underperforming this year so far. Looking at the Indian market, the best performer, NTPC Limited, they're up 2.3%. Not enough to really change the picture of the chart here. Bharati Infratel up 2%, and again the chart not looking great. We're seeing that as a theme really. The bad looking charts are the ones that are performing best in the Indian market overnight. And here we see Tata Motors again up, but not really on the long-term chart going anywhere. But we are seeing the relative turning and the medium-term chart looking better. Looking at the downside for India, we had Tata Consultancy Services. They were down 2.8%. So we are seeing there a little bit of a push to make a new high. Got good upside targets, and here we see live pricing coming in from Yahoo Finance. Taking a look at Europe, we'll start by looking at the UK market, the top 100 stocks. HSBC have come out with strong results. They're looking pretty good on that medium term. They're up. They're the best performer this morning, up 2.3%. Anglo American up 1.2%. The chart continues to look pretty good. If we look at the downside, we've got Intercontinental Hotels down nearly 3%, but the chart actually nudging new highs, just hitting resistance there by the looks of things. We do have some long-term upside targets, and we have outperformed the Dow Jones by 5% this year so far. Other stocks that are down, EasyJet Airlines been hit. EasyJet down 1.3%. We see here International Consolidated Airlines, and TUI also in the travel sector lower, and have really massively underperformed the Dow this year by almost 40%. Not looking great as a chart. Looking at midcaps in the UK, we've got Bakkavor Group. They're up 3.5%. Doesn't really change the picture on the chart. Amigo Holdings, they're up nearly 3%. Looking at the downside, we've got Into Properties. They're down 8% this morning. That chart still continues to look pretty bad. And Cyrus Minerals down 3%. Again, making new lows, looking pretty bad. The Eurostoxx 50, if we look at the top performers here, we've got Adidas in Germany. They're up 7% this morning. That's a rocketing chart. Lots of upside targets. Really an amazing looking chart there, and the relative breaking out as well. So Adidas looking very strong. SocGen in France, they're up as well, and just breaking through into bullish territory. Banks looking quite strong. We've got AXA, we've got BNP Paribas. We've got a lot of the banks actually rising there this morning. ING, the list there too. Looking on the downside, we've got Nokia. They're the worst performer, down 1% this morning. CRH and Ireland, they're also just struggling, but the chart's still looking okay. And we here see the updates coming in from Yahoo Finance again. That's it for today. Until Monday, sorry, Tuesday, it's a bank holiday, and Monday in the UK. Happy charting. See you then.